Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and I'm starting a 4-part series on loving kindness meditation. I'm going to help you understand what loving kindness is and how to actually do this meditation today. We're going to end up doing a session together, and then over the course of the entire 4-part series, I'm going to be helping you to build up your loving kindness meditation practice. So I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. The way that loving kindness meditation works is it's actually transforming your mind to be more loving and kind. It's helping you to eliminate the anger, hatred, and ill will, and all the lesser versions like irritation, frustration, agitation, even the slightest dislike in your mind towards other people will be eliminated by the time you get to enlightenment. Oftentimes people think that the dislike that an individual has in their mind is actually coming from other people. But in reality, it's the mind's expectations and wanting everybody to be a certain way that when people meet your expectations, you're like them or you're happy with them. But when people don't meet your expectations, you will dislike them. And there might even be stronger feelings like annoyance or frustration, agitation, or even hatred towards another individual. As long as your mind's doing this, it's still having pollution and it's not able to experience complete peace and complete joy. So there's a meditation technique that's going to essentially rewire your mind to be more loving and kind through the meditation, but then you're going to need to go out in the world and be more loving and kind in your day-to-day life. So I'm going to teach you all about this today and help you to understand it through the words of the Buddha and helping you to then understand how to do a loving kindness meditation session so that you can actually do this on a regular basis and transform your mind. As we go in our class today, you're welcome to ask any and all questions that you like. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. I'll be able to see that, and then I'll be able to answer your question. If you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like by just unmuting your microphone, and then I'll be able to answer your questions that way. So first, just a couple of things to kind of start you off is that as you've learned so far in this group learning program, it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing the discontent feelings. It's the mind longing, yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. And you need to be able to independently verify this for yourself through actively studying the Four Noble Truths and independently verifying them and then practicing them on a day-to-day basis so that you can dispel any kind of false belief that your anger, hostility, bitterness, aggression, all of those types of things are coming from other people. You need to dispel that belief, because if you continue to walk around thinking that way, you'll never actually solve the real problem, because the real problem is inside your own mind and you won't be addressing that problem. You'll be blaming other people for what it is that you're experiencing, pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile to them, or putting your expectations on them and trying to control them. Well, there's this better way of life that the Buddha taught to be able to help you see what's actually causing these feelings so that then you can actually go in and remove the causes and conditions that are producing it so you can get to peace and joy. If you have any kind of anger or even those lesser versions like dislike towards other people, the mind's not yet enlightened. As I mentioned, by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike for other people. And not only this, but this meditation is really helpful at transforming your mind. If you have like a negative inner dialogue, like where you're degrading and diminishing this being who you are yourself, this meditation will help you to transform that too, because it's no fun walking around with an inner dialogue that's constantly downing you or degrading you or diminishing you. So this meditation is going to help you with that as well. There's essentially 4 different meditations that the Buddha taught as part of his path to enlightenment. The first one is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is what I've taught so far in this group learning program. We did a 4-part series on this, helping students to build up this practice. It's helping you to eliminate the unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment, also referred to as wants or expectations or clinging or grasping or holding, because that's what's causing the mind to be discontent. That when the mind gets what it wants or expects, it gets all those pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But when the mind's not getting its cravings, desires, attachments met, that's where the painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, agitation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, all these things are actually being caused by the same underlying thing, which is the craving, desire, attachment. So this meditation when you're focused on the breath, you're developing the concentration, that wholesome quality of concentration. When the mind moves off the breath, you're developing the mindfulness because you're aware that the mind moved off the breath. And when you cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath, you're training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, where it's not holding on. The mind can actually let go. So the goal of that meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. The goal is to notice your thoughts sooner and sooner and let them go easier and easier, so that now in day-to-day life, when you're noticing unwholesome thoughts come into the mind, whether it's a conditioned feeling or whether it's any other unwholesome thought, like maybe you are experiencing conceit, where the mind is being arrogant and prideful, you would like to cut that off and let it go, right? So any unwholesome thoughts in your day-to-day life, you would like to cut those off. In meditation, you're cutting off anything and anything that comes up. But in your day-to-day life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts that are coming up. So that's what you've been learning so far. And I recommend for students to spend a good 4 weeks just building that practice up. And sometimes people spend, 6, even 8 weeks just to work on building up their breathing mindfulness meditation practice. And then as you're doing that and you're ready to move into the next meditation, that's where loving kindness comes in, because this addresses the anger, the hatred, the ill will, and all those lesser versions. Because what this meditation is doing is essentially rewiring the mind to eliminate its anger, hatred, and ill will and cultivate loving kindness. There's these other 2 meditations that we'll talk about when we get to that point in our program. Today, it's all about loving kindness meditation, helping you to understand that. So first, let's just talk about what loving kindness is. This is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment. It's a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. In the Pali language, which is the historical language of the teachings of the Buddha, it's referred to as metta. So you might hear people referring to it in this way. They might call it metta meditation, right? Well, this active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, you need to make sure that it's without judgment. You're not trying to determine whether someone deserves your loving kindness or not. You're just choosing to be loving and kind with all the people around you. Where, like, if you've been taught, like, don't respect others until they respect you first. Well, if everybody was doing this, nobody would be respecting anybody, because I would be saying, well, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. And then you'd be saying, well, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. So now nobody's respecting anybody. So if we did that with our love and kindness, the same thing would be a result. Nobody would be loving and kind to anybody, because everyone would be holding back their loving kindness and saying, I'm not going to be loving and kind to you until you're loving and kind with me, right? So you're not looking for this conditions. You're not trying to see if someone meets certain conditions or expectations before you're loving and kind with them. That's not how an enlightened being functions, because they understand that by putting out love and kindness, this is what's coming back to you. You shouldn't practice loving kindness because you want people to be loving and kind with you. You should do it because you understand it's the wise thing to do based on the natural law of karma, that whatever you put out, it's going to come back to you. So this loving kindness needs to be this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. What this is the antidote, or the wholesome root, or the remedy for anger, hatred, and ill will. This is what's going to antidote the mind. It helps you eliminate the harshness, bitterness, hostility, resentment, agitation, frustration, any of that kind of stuff that's in the mind. It'll help you eliminate that, whether you have that towards others or you have that towards yourself. Loving kindness is one of the Brahma Viharas. This is a Pali word that you could think of these as 4 healthy mental states. You're going to learn this when we get to chapter 14 of our group learning program. These are 4 healthy mental states that you need to cultivate in order to transform the mind away from certain unwholesome thoughts, certain unwholesome qualities, that you will be able to cultivate these in the mind. These are loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Well, loving kindness is actually the first one. So I'll just tell you that so that you'll know when we get to chapter 14 that you'll understand what that is. Because these are 4 healthy mental states that need to be cultivated in order to be able to make one's way to enlightenment, because it's antidoting very specific things in the mind. And we'll talk about that when we get to chapter 14. So at the core of all of the teachings of the Buddha is the Eightfold Path. That's the core central teaching that everything else is plugging into. And if you remember, there were certain teachings on the Eightfold Path that deal with loving kindness or goodwill or harmlessness or speaking with a mind of loving kindness and all these other things. So this core central teaching of the Buddha that everything else plugs into, loving kindness meditation plugs into it because it's helping to prepare the mind to be able to have things like right intention, right speech, right action, and all these other qualities that the Buddha is teaching you as part of the Eightfold Path. Without this particular technique, you wouldn't be able to practice the other components of the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is the path to enlightenment. It's the core central teaching that's going to guide the mind to enlightenment. So in the words of the Buddha, if you can think back to what you've learned about the Eightfold Path, when he talks about right intention, which is the second factor on the Eightfold Path, he talks about the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness, where the intention of renunciation is the willingness to let go and give up your false beliefs, your false opinions, your false views, and the unwholesome things that the mind actually has. If you weren't having the intention or the thinking or the thought of renunciation, of letting go, you would never get to enlightenment. Because if you're currently experiencing any of those discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others, there's certain false beliefs in your mind. There's certain lack of wisdom. There's certain unwholesome moral conduct. And if you just hold on to that stuff, you'll never get to enlightenment, right? So you need to have this intention of renunciation. And you're not getting rid of your false beliefs by bringing in new beliefs. You're actually bringing in wisdom by learning, reflecting, and practicing to independently verify the truth. When you get this wisdom, then you see, whoa, this conflicts with what I believed my entire life. Now I got to get rid of my beliefs because now I have this wisdom. And one of the first false beliefs you need to eliminate is that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated or sad or any of these other discontent feelings. Because if you continue to believe that, you're just going to go around not addressing the true problem, which was inside your own mind. So when you learn the Four Noble Truths and you independently verify them, and you can see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, when you see that conflicts with your beliefs, you need to have this thinking or this intention or this thought of renunciation and letting that go. And there's going to be plenty of things along the path that you're going to need to be willing to let go of. Then there's the intention of non-ill will. Non-ill will is goodwill because a double negative in English is a positive. So non-ill will is the same thing as saying goodwill. So this is the thinking or the thought or the intention of goodwill, which is loving kindness. But how could you practice this intention or thinking or thought of loving kindness if you didn't have a tool or technique to help you to cultivate it? And your speech and your actions are going to emanate from your intentions. So if your intentions are not pure with right intention, then you're not going to be able to speak and act in a way according to the natural laws that are going to produce wholesome results or wholesome karma for you. So you need to develop this intention or this thinking or these thoughts of goodwill. But again, how could you do that if you didn't have a technique or some method to help you to do that? And that's where loving kindness meditation comes in. Then there's this intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm. You need to have the thinking or the thought or the intention of this, because anytime you put out harm is just going to come back to you. So you're going to need to cultivate this harmlessness in the mind. Then there's right speech. If you remember right speech, the Buddha teaches at the top line to eliminate lying, slander, harsh speech, and frivolous speech, because all of those things are based in craving, desire, attachment. And there can oftentimes be a certain amount of ill will involved in those things too, right? Particularly slander and harsh speech. There's typically ill will embedded in that type of speech. Well, when you go deeper into the teachings of the Buddha, you start to learn the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, where the Buddha teaches you to speak at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. But then again, how could you cultivate this in terms of your speech if you didn't have a technique to help you cultivate it in the mind? Because all your speech is emanating from your mind. So you're going to need something like loving kindness meditation to be able to cultivate in the mind, almost filling up your gas tank so that you can go out into the world and be loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions. So those 5 factors of well-spoken speech, if you learn them closely, it's going to teach you how to speak wisely and harmlessly, where you're not causing harm through your speech. And part of that is having a mind of loving kindness. And you can see in situations where you didn't speak that way, it didn't turn out well. Because the opposite of loving kindness would be inner hate. There's been situations, I'm sure, where you've spoken to people with inner hate. And you can look at that situation now and look back on it, not to feel guilty or shameful, but to cultivate wisdom and independently verify the teachings of the Buddha to see that, yeah, when you speak that way, it doesn't turn out well. And you can see how true the teachings of the Buddha are to ensure that you're speaking with a mind of loving kindness. But you're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and start practicing loving kindness through your speech and actions automatically. Not even when you start meditating. It's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is people think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. And this just isn't true. Everything you've ever done in life has been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. You haven't mastered anything the first time you actually decided to do something, whether it's learning to read, write, and speak English, or whether it's some job or occupation. It was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And it's the same thing here with this path to enlightenment. So this meditation is going to gradually wear away your anger, hatred, and bitterness. So more and more you can arise these wholesome qualities to be able to have the intentions or thinking or thought of goodwill, and then that can emanate through your speech and your actions. This next part right here is an excerpt from the teachings of the Buddha, just like all the others, where the Buddha was actually reminding his students that it was important for them to speak at the proper time, what they say is true, gentle, beneficial, with a mind of loving kindness, and this would be the wise way to talk. And he was reminding them of those 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and at the same time reminding him that other people aren't going to be speaking with you with the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. As you get closer and closer to enlightenment, you'll get to a point where about 99.99999% of the people around you are speaking that way. But as you're making your way to enlightenment, you're going to have plenty of instances where people aren't speaking to you that way. Even an enlightened being has individuals that speak to them occasionally like that, but it's really a once-off. And when that occurs, your mind's completely peaceful and joyful when that's occurring, that you don't have any discontentedness whatsoever. But eventually, you'll get to the point where everybody is speaking to you pretty much in a very loving and kind way because you've been practicing these teachings for so long. But early on, that's not the case. And even through like the 3, 4, 5 year mark, that's not the case. You're going to still be around people who are being bitter and harsh and hostile. So they're going to be speaking to you in an improper time. They're going to speak falsehoods. They're going to speak harsh. They're going to speak unbeneficially. And they're going to speak with a mind of inner hate. And the Buddha here was reminding his students when that's occurring, he says, "Herein, monks, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall reside compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. We shall reside enveloping that person with a mind filled with loving kindness. And starting with him, we shall reside enveloping the all-encompassing world with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, joyful, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train monks." Right? So here what he's saying is even though these other people are being bitter and harsh and hostile with you, you should utter no evil words back. Because if you understand the natural law of karma, you understand that's the most unwise thing that you could ever do. Because when you're putting out harshness and bitterness, it's going to just come back to you. Right? When I was growing up, I had a lot of harshness and hostility and bitterness towards my mom. And as I aged, even in my early adulthood, it was the same way. When mom and I were together, it was only a matter of time before fireworks went off. If she picked up the rubber ball of anger and threw it around the room, I'd pick it right up and throw it right back around the room as well. That's exactly the opposite of what the Buddha is teaching you, because that just keeps the rubber balls bouncing, right? So what the Buddha is teaching you is to not utter evil words back, but instead to have this loving kindness, this active goodwill towards them, this genuine interest in seeing them be well, understanding that their mind is having some challenges. And what I would suggest you do in those situations is just walk away. When someone's being bitter and harsh and hostile to you, no matter who it is, just walk away. because your mind isn't in the best position to be able to say anything or do anything. It's better to just walk away from the situation. And if they get more angry when you walk away, that's helping you to be able to see that you're making a wise decision, because you're not the one who's causing their anger. What's causing their anger is they're having a craving, desire, attachment. And by you staying there in the conversation, it's just allowing that attachment to continue. And now, when you choose to break contact and walk away, you're protecting the contentedness of your own mind, and you're allowing their mind to let go. You're not causing that person's anger. So there's nothing you can do to stop them from being angry. Sometimes people think that when someone else is angry, because of your attachment, maybe wanting everybody to be a certain way, you might feel like you have to calm this person down. And that's your duty and that's your responsibility. But you can't calm this person down. This person needs to choose to let go of whatever craving, desire, attachment that they're having and calm their own mind down. It's not possible for you to calm somebody else's mind down. So it's usually best to just walk away from those situations. And then if the person tries to draw you back into the conversation, you're going to need to have enough discipline and restraint to just keep walking. And if you do this enough times, the people around you who you're really close to, they'll get to the point where they realize that anytime they're bitter and harsh and hostile with you, you walk away. And if they're interested in talking with you, they're going to need to be calm. You can't overtly teach somebody with unsolicited guidance. That would be unwise, because now your ego and your craving is coming into the relationship and causing difficulties. But what you can do is you can politely just walk away. And now these people over time, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 different times, they realize, wow, if I'm interested in talking to her, or if I'm interested in talking with him, I'm going to need to calm down. And then you'll see that people will start being more and more calm with you. Whereas if you sit there and you argue with them and bicker and fuss, now that's what they learn. Hey, this person's going to throw this ball around with me, right? So let me throw the ball around. They're going to throw the ball around, and we'll just throw this ball around. And now at the end of this, everybody feels stressed and anxiety and all kinds of difficulties. So the Buddha is teaching the ordained practitioners and anybody who's interested in getting to enlightenment to remain unaffected with your mind when people are speaking to you this way, because you're not the one who's causing it. When they speak bitter and harsh and hostile and hateful, it's coming from their own mind. It's not coming from your mind. Sometimes people absorb what's being said and it really bothers them within their own mind. But that's just because they're not understanding that that hatefulness and that speech that they're having is coming from their own mind. You're not the one causing it. And when you get rid of personal existence view and you're no longer clinging to this perception of wanting people to perceive you a certain way, it'll be easier to walk away. Also, when you eliminate any kind of craving for everybody to be a certain way, you can understand this person's angry. It's time to just walk away, end the conversation and move on. And you don't have to say anything to end the conversation. You can just walk away. That's ending the conversation. So this is the Eightfold Path, and where the teachings integrate in terms of right intention, right speech. But we could also say right action has loving kindness in it too. Because to eliminate killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, there needs to be a certain amount of loving kindness there, right? Because in order to do those things, there needs to be a certain amount of anger and ill will to kill, to steal, or have sexual misconduct. Same thing is true with right livelihood. In order to practice a wholesome livelihood, there needs to be a certain amount of loving kindness towards other beings, but also yourself too. Because when you're putting yourself in a situation where you're practicing a wrong livelihood, this is causing harm to other beings, and it's going to cause harm to yourself as well. Then there's some teachings from the Buddha on loving kindness meditation. There's plenty, but I've just grabbed a few here so that you can see what he taught. Here he's teaching in this first one, his son Rahula. Sometimes people think that the Buddha left his family and never came back. This isn't actually true. He actually came back to that area. His wife ordained with him. His son ordained. His stepmother, which was his aunt essentially, because his mother died at birth, essentially within 7 days after his birth. So the Buddha taught plenty members of his family, and they were all getting to enlightenment. So here he's teaching his son. And you can see the way that a Buddha teaches. They teach very clear, very concise, and very precise. You don't have to interpret his words here. You don't have to figure out what he's saying. He says, Rahula, develop meditation on loving kindness, For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. Again, very clear, very concise. You don't have to interpret anything. You don't have to figure it out. It can't be misunderstood, right? He's explaining that loving kindness meditation is what's going to eliminate your anger, hatred, and ill will. And if you understand the 10 fetters, which I just taught on Sunday, you understand that that's one of the pollutions that are in the mind that's motivating all kinds of unskillful conduct in your day-to-day relationships. And as long as you have ill will in your mind, you're not going to be able to reside harmoniously with all beings. So this loving kindness meditation is exactly what the Buddha prescribed in order to eliminate this from the mind. Here he says, loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. Again, very clear, very concise, very much to the point. And then here's another teaching that is just an excerpt, but I need to kind of help you understand what's going on during this time frame so that you understand this teaching. So during the lifetime of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, he was born in what we refer to as Nepal, and he grew up in what we refer to as Northeast India. And when a Buddha exists in the world, there's many other people that are teaching too. It's not just a Buddha, right? If you live during the lifetime of a Buddha, you'd probably be interested in studying with an actual Buddha, right? You'd probably be interested to study with that individual. But not everybody knows who is a Buddha at the lifetime of a Buddha. Now, 2,500 years later, oh yeah, we know who the Buddha was, but during his lifetime, not everybody knew what a Buddha was and that he was an actual Buddha. So there were multiple people in the world that were teaching and claiming that it was their teachings that were leading to enlightenment. So the Buddha knew that it was his teachings that led to enlightenment, and that's why he was so dedicated to be able to share them with others in the world. But sometimes his students would come in contact with students of other teachers because they were all living amongst kind of like the same region of the world, and they would go out in the public and they would collect donations of food and things like this, and then they would sit down together and they would eat this food and they would talk and have conversation with each other. So the Buddha here is saying to his students, suppose they ask, meaning these other students from other teachers, suppose they ask, but what, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned? You should answer, the liberation of the mind by loving kindness. For one who attends carefully to the liberation of the mind by loving kindness, unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned. This, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned. Okay. So what unarisen anger is that inside each individual's mind who's unenlightened, they're going to have the fetters, these 10 pollutions of the mind. And one of those is ill will. It's a deeply rooted container in the mind that right now, when you're listening to me talk, you probably don't have any anger or frustration or agitation in your mind. You're just listening to somebody talk. But if somebody did something or said something and it triggers one of your cravings inside your mind, that ill will can arise at any moment. You can be angry and bitter and harsh at the snap of a fingers if one of those cravings got triggered. That's your unarisen anger. The deeply rooted container in the mind referred to as a fetter or a taint or a pollution of ill will. So the Buddha is saying, if they ask, what is it that ensures that this does not arise? Well, it's loving kindness. And then there's some situations where you have anger that has arisen in your mind. Suppose they ask how to get rid of that, how to get rid of that arisen anger, how to abandon it from the mind. Well, loving kindness. Loving kindness is the exact antidote to the anger, hatred, and ill will and all those lesser versions. So anytime that you see your mind having anger and hatred, the thing that's going to antidote that and get that out of the mind is loving kindness. So you can apply effort to bring that into the mind. So if you're doing the loving kindness meditation on a regular basis and building up your meditation practice, where you're doing loving kindness on a certain regular frequency, like every morning would be ideal, as you're filling up that gas tank, now you go out into the world and be loving and kind. But because your mind is unenlightened, you're going to experience situations where you're angry, where you're frustrated, agitated, or annoyed. And where you see this, you have the tool in your back pocket to bring up this loving kindness in the mind. if you've been cultivating it through meditation, you can bubble this up in the mind, and this will eradicate the anger, hatred, and ill will and all those lesser versions. So it's loving kindness and loving kindness meditation that's going to transform the mind away from anger, hatred, and ill will. You don't need to believe me. You don't need to believe these words. You can see what the Buddha is teaching. Instead, you can learn it and practice it and then see for yourself. Because as you're learning and practicing this, gradually, slowly but surely, this will wear away your anger, hatred, and ill will towards other beings. And then you'll see the truth for yourself, and you will know with 100% certainty, with wisdom, that loving kindness is what antidotes anger, hatred, and ill will. So I'm going to teach you guys what loving kindness is. I'm going to teach you loving kindness meditation. But before I do that, I would like to pause here and see if you guys have any questions about what I've shared so far before I actually teach you the technique of loving kindness meditation. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions you like by just unmuting your microphone. Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. Okay, so let me teach you loving kindness meditation, and then we'll actually do it together as a group so that you can practice it and get familiar with it. So loving kindness meditation is best done in the morning, because then you can go out in your day and be loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions. That's where the real transformation is occurring in your day-to-day life. The meditation, if you just meditated and that's it, you're not going to get rid of your anger. It's not possible. Your meditation is essentially rewiring the mind or filling up the gas tank so you can go out in the world and be loving and kind on a day-to-day basis. So you're going to need to be doing loving kindness meditation essentially in the morning would be really wise, but that's not to say you couldn't do it at any other time during the day. If you got a phone call at 2 p.m. in the afternoon and you were noticing anger coming up in your mind, do loving kindness meditation. But in terms of like a consistent practice, in the morning is really ideal for loving kindness meditation. And then if you're noticing anger at any other time during your day, you could surely do loving kindness in the middle of the day or in the evening as well. But just as a regular schedule, it would be really nice to do loving kindness in the morning before you go out and face the world so that you can have as much loving kindness in your mind as possible. Because the real transformation to your mind and your relationships is going to happen when you're out in the world being loving and kind with others. Because so far in the past, you've had a certain amount of bitterness and hostility in your relationships, and that's what's going to come back to you. But if you can transform your mind gradually, slowly but surely, through being loving and kind with loving kindness meditation supporting that, now that's where your relationships will really transform. It's through you actually practicing being loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions that's going to transform your relationships. So I'm going to share with you here the loving kindness meditation, and then I'll open up for some final questions before we actually do this together. So we start with the chanting to ease us into the meditation. That is going to help to ease your mind into the meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. And I'm going to be doing a 4-part series on this starting 4 weeks from now, where you can learn the chanting. But if you'd like to chant along, you're welcome to, because the chanting sheets are on our website. You can go to buddhadailywisdom.com, click on free books, and then scroll down towards the bottom and you'll see the daily chanting sheet. So I'm going to be chanting on the way into the meditation. Then I'm going to guide you in a breathing mindfulness meditation session. This is the meditation I taught already, where you're just focused on the breath, and anytime the mind moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. Really simple, very straightforward, but very challenging for the mind because it's not used to doing this. So I've taught this as part of the group learning program already. Then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet for about 3 minutes or so while we're practicing breathing mindfulness meditation. Then I'm going to come back in with affirmations of the loving kindness meditation, where I'm going to say things like, may I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes. When you hear each one of these phrases spaced out, you would like to repeat this within your own mind on the out breath. Okay? Then after we do these 4 phrases, then we're going to expand our ring. We're going to go to things like, may mom and dad be peaceful, safe, well and free of discontentedness and the suffering it causes. And we're going to go through successive rings until we get to all beings. We're going to do about 6 rings. This visual aid that I'm using is just a visual aid. So we're going to go through about 6 rings. Now, when we're doing these affirmations, you're not trying to change mom or dad through your meditation. This is impossible. If it was as easy as a bunch of us getting together and changing other people through our meditation, there'd be no such thing as murders or rapes or robbery or jails or prison cells or in poverty and things like this. We'd just all get together, we'd meditate, and it would disappear, right? But that's not the way the world works. What meditation is doing is it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session to eliminate certain unwholesome qualities from your mind and to cultivate certain wholesome qualities in your mind. You can't change other people through your meditation. So while we're doing these affirmations, this is rewiring your mind to be more loving and kind and think in more loving and kind ways towards mom and dad. So that now when you're around mom and dad, you can be more loving and kind through your intention, speech, and actions, right? So we're not changing mom and dad here through our meditation and all the other affirmations we do, like our family, our friends, our coworkers, our neighbors, people like this. We're not changing them. We can't. It's not possible. But what we're doing is that we're rewiring our mind so that we can have this loving kindness in the mind. And now when we go out into the world, we can be more loving and kind. And that's where the real transformation to your mind and your life is truly occurring. Once we're done with the affirmations, we're going to go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation for a period of time. Then we're going to come out with some more chanting. So that's where I'll kind of close up today's class, opening up to any questions that you guys have at that point. So the way that I think about this is it's like a loving kindness sandwich. That in the middle, you've got your loving kindness, right? Then your lettuce and tomato, that's like the breathing mindfulness meditation. And the bread, holding it all together, that's the chanting, right? So there's this structure that we're going to follow in order to help the mind cultivate this loving kindness. And keep in mind that this is for your mind, not for other people. So let me see if you guys have any questions on this before I move into the actual meditation itself. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. I saw, Kristen, your hand earlier. Did your question get answered? Yeah? Okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to do this loving kindness meditation. And when I do this, I'm just using very general and very broad statements where it's, may my family, friends, coworkers, things like this, may they be peaceful, right? But when you do this on your own, you're going to need to customize it. And we'll talk more about that at the end of our meditation, but you're going to need to customize this. What I'm doing for you here is helping you to see the possibilities and what the structure is and how to actually do this as a technique. And then you're going to need to customize it for your specific needs, which we can talk about after the meditation and you've had some experience with it. So if you'd like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, these are the 3 positions that work really well with loving kindness meditation. There is a walking position, but we tend to not do the loving kindness meditation in that position because it doesn't really work out well for that. So you can take a seated, lying, or standing position because they work really well. And you can really sit however you're comfortable. I give guidance that are recommendations and suggestions on your body positioning, but there's not just one fixed way. So you're going to need to find whatever's comfortable for you. So I'm going to ease us into the chanting, into the meditation with some chanting, and then I'll be back with some guidance after that. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava Otang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Sanghang namami. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Iti piso emagawa arahang samma sambuddho vicacaranang sammono sakato rogawitu anutero purisa dhamma sati satatawa manusanam Bhoto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start focusing the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May my family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May all those who have harmed me be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. Arahang Sama Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa อิติปิโสมะคะวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสรังโอโตภาควาติ Okay, if you would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, so this was loving kindness meditation. As I mentioned, this is what's going to help you to be able to transform your mind away from the anger, hatred, and ill will. What I'm going to do is just share a few things with you in closing, but I'm going to open up to questions before we actually finish our class. As I was mentioning, that you're going to need to customize this meditation for yourself, because here, when I'm leading a group of people, I'm just using general, broad statements. Whereas if there's someone in your life named Bob or Susie or Rebecca or somebody like this that you have anger, hatred, ill will towards, maybe they're in your life now, maybe they were in your life in the past, maybe you'll never see them again, maybe they're actually dead. As long as your mind's holding on to anger, hatred, and ill will, it's not going to be liberated. It's not going to be free from that. So you're going to need to actually include people with specific names or groups of groups of people. Like if you have anger towards all police officers or lawyers or accountants or something like this, you can use a group of people, a certain nationality or a certain religion or something like this. You can use groups of individuals. So you would like to actually do affirmations based on what's going on within your own mind. That's where the mindfulness comes in. That's why you need to cultivate breathing mindfulness meditation and have awareness of your own mind, of where's the anger, where's the hatred, where's the ill will, who's it towards, what person or people or groups of people that you have that for. So what you would probably do is you would start your meditation first, starting with I, meaning this being who you are, because you can't have loving kindness for others if you don't know how to love and be kind to yourself. So you start with I. Then you might go through a ring or two of people that you actually have loving kindness for, maybe like your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children, people like this. Then go through some rings or two of people that you're more neutral about, maybe some of your neighbors or coworkers or something like that. Then you would like to have some rings of people that you do have anger and hatred towards, so that basically this kind of bubbles up. You bubble up the loving kindness, and then it kind of overflows into these other groups. Right? And then ultimately you end with all beings. So gradually, slowly but surely, you'll be able to wear away your anger, hatred, and ill will. You're not going to know how much each day you're actually wearing away, but when it's completely gone, you're going to know that. Because each day as you're meditating, each day when you're going out into the world and practicing, you're not going to know how much of this anger you've eliminated. But when you go in a significant period of time without having any anger, hatred, or ill will towards a particular being or group of beings, you'll know that your mind is transformed. So when I first started this, I was doing myself and my mom almost exclusively because I had a lot of resentment built up towards my mom, and I had a lot of negative self-talk within my own mind. And I did that for a good solid 6 months of just me and her and all beings, right? And I would even do myself with like 2 rings or 3 rings, and my mom 2 or 3 rings, right? And then all beings. Well, over time, as I started interacting with mom, I started seeing that I was loving and kind and generous and respectful and treating her in really nice and kind ways. And it had been 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years where there was no anger in the mind whatsoever towards her. So I didn't know each day how much I was wearing away, but when it was completely gone, I could see that. So this is what you're going to notice, is that you're going to gradually be able to wear this away. And it's going to be in certain relationships. In other relationships, you might still have anger towards. So like I wore away the anger towards my mom long before I wore it away towards my wife, right? I had certain expectations and certain cravings in there that was motivating that. So you're going to see this kind of cascading effect of a gradual improvement to the condition of your mind. And you'd like to stay dedicated and committed and determined with confidence as you're working towards more and more improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. Remembering that you're going to need to not only practice loving kindness meditation, but through your intention, speech, and actions, you're going to need to be loving and kind. And part of that, you can actually practice generosity with your life partner, with your children, with your parents, with your siblings. You can practice generosity. But remember, pure generosity is with no expectation of anything in return, where you don't want anything or expect anything, not even a thank you. And you're just sharing with other people your time, effort, energy, and resources. And this is going to also help you to bring up that loving kindness in the mind. So let me know what questions you guys have. Whether you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put that into the comment section. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So I see Paul has his hand up. So Paul, if you'd like to unmute, you're welcome to.
Hi, David.
Hello, hello.
My question is, I'm into the habit of almost always using your podcast to guide me through meditation, whether it be the mindfulness or whether it be the loving kindness. Is that a bad thing to be in a habit of doing? Is it something I should work towards independently doing it without the guide you're guiding through the podcast?
Yeah, I don't think in terms of good or bad, because it kind of implies that we're judging, So I think about wise and unwise. So if that's what you've needed to get to where you are now, that's fine, no worries. But yes, over time, you would like to eliminate that, because the mind can get attached to that, where it's wanting that to be permanent. So you would like to integrate some impermanence into the situation and gradually move away from it. And you can do that slowly but surely, like do one session with it, one session without, one session with it, one session without. And after you do that for a week or two, do one session with it, 2 or 3 without, one session with it, 2 or 3 without. Do that for a week or two. And then, gradually expand this wider and wider till eventually you'll get to the point where you're completely comfortable doing it on your own. Because you would like to get to the point where you only need 3 things to meditate: the body, the mind, and the breath. And you'll have those 3 things with you all the time. So you'd like to get to that point where you don't have any kind of clinging or attachments, even in your meditation, and even to meditation itself, right? If somebody was angry because they didn't meditate, that means they're attached to meditation and they're craving it to be permanent. So you like to get to the point where you introduce some impermanence and you get to the point where you're completely comfortable without doing meditation with any kind of guidance. But that comes through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress.
Yeah, I've heard your podcast so many times now, and I know what to do, but it just seems to help me to try to start off right when doing it and not find myself thinking thoughts through the entire session. And then, after half an hour, I've basically done nothing but thoughts, So your guidance kind of helps me to try to remind myself not to be going down that rabbit hole,
Yeah. So another word for craving, desire, attachment, or wants or expectations or clinging or grasping or holding is dependency, right? The mind is dependent on this, or the mind is using it as a crutch, right? Those are some slang words that we use. So this is where you are right now. But what you would like to do is gradually get to the point where you don't need that. You can just sit down and meditate, and your mind can just go right into the meditation, and you're able to reap the rewards and benefits of that. Because you're not going to always have that podcast with you. Like say you're at a park, you're walking around, and it's like, wow, such a beautiful day. I'd like to sit down and meditate. Oh, I don't have David's podcast with me. Oh man, I can't do it. Right? So you'd like to shed all of that. And because what's producing the benefits of the enlightened mental state, it's not the meditation itself. It's actually the elimination of craving, anger, and ignorance, particularly the cravings, right? So let's just say, for example, somebody, are you familiar with durian fruit? You were here in Asia, so you're probably familiar with durian fruit.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I am.
So let's just say somebody eats every single fruit that is known to man, but they absolutely despise durian fruit and they won't eat it and they won't touch it. They don't want to be anywhere near it. They're averse to it. That's because their mind has a craving, desire, attachment in their mind. And as long as this is in there, the mind is not going to be fully concentrated. It's not going to be fully enlightened, that they're going to still experience discontentedness. When they walk past a durian fruit stand and they smell durian fruit, they're going to be frustrated and agitated. They're not experiencing the complete peace and joy. And they're also not experiencing the concentration and the focus and the clarity, because the mind with craving, desire, attachment is pulling it in all these different directions. So you can actually be attached to meditation. You can be attached to a certain person guiding you, or a podcast, or things like this. You can be attached to your toothpaste or your deodorant or any of these other number of things. And you would like to introduce some impermanence where you're switching it up and you're not giving the mind an opportunity to be attached to these kinds of things. Because when you get rid of these attachments, that's where the mind's going to be uplifted, and you're not carrying around the burden of the mind having craving, desire, attachment, and being pulled in all these different directions. So while meditation is important and it's building certain qualities of mind, what it's actually helping you to be able to do is eliminate the unwholesome qualities and cultivate the wholesome qualities, not just in meditation, but outside of meditation too. So if you continue to stay holding on to this guidance from me in your meditation, then you wouldn't actually get to enlightenment. You're going to need to gradually move away from it so that you can be completely independent of that, and you're not dependent on anything whatsoever. You can just sit down and meditate, boom, and you can do it.
Yeah, I figured you'd say that.
Mm-hmm.
And intellectually, I understand much of what you teach, and I have listened to a lot of and attended a lot of your classes. But I'm losing motivation, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing less meditation, and it's probably because I'm disappointed that I'm not really seeing any benefit. And you'll say that, well, you got to get out there and start practicing. And I do practice with eyes open, but and not near enough, I'm sure. And it's not enough to do some generosity here and there. You've got to live it. You've got to breathe it. And I'm not doing that. And I'm wondering if there's any advice you can give to get me past this stumbling block, because I'm afraid I might just slip off and stop altogether, because I'm not motivated, because it's been over 6 months now that I've been doing this, and I was very regular, and now I'm less regular, and I think it's because I feel that I'm not getting, the benefit that I expected.
Yeah, first thing you got to do is get rid of your expectations of any particular type of benefit, because that's going to stumble you up right there, because that's a craving, desire, attachment. I expect this, and now I've got this. This is the whole problem that your mind's facing with the craving, desire, attachment, is it's going around setting all these expectations, and now it's disappointed and frustrated when those aren't being met. So get rid of your expectations of where you should be and where you want to be, and just understand this is where you're at. That's the first part. The second part is, if you remember back when we had our personal guidance session, we talked about remembering the Eightfold Path and studying that closely. And then you had your medical challenges. And then now I think you're probably coming back from that. So if I was you, I would really deeply study the Eightfold Path and then come talk with me to be able to confirm that you know it. Because what we discovered during that session is you didn't understand the entire Eightfold Path and you weren't practicing it closely. That's why you're not seeing the results. Because what you've been taught previously is just to meditate. But that's one component of one factor. It's like 6.25% of the path to enlightenment. So if you're only doing 6% of something, if you only eat 6% of your food today, you're going to be really hungry when you're done at the end of the day, right? So you need to fully enjoy this meal that the Buddha is serving to you and eat all of it, right? You need to eat every single thing. And then you can be full and you can experience true benefit. But until you've memorized the Eightfold Path and you're practicing it consistently long term, you're not going to see the significant progress that your mind's looking for. But if you get rid of those expectations and you dedicate time to studying, understanding that your mind's slipping into complacency, you need to arise energy, vigor, vitality, determination. You need to get to the point where you despise the discontent feelings in the situations that you experience because of them, like the difficulties in relationships and things like that. You need to despise that so much that you're ready to get out of it. And you're tired of this constant difficulties and struggles over and over and over again. This is like the escape door. This is like the fire exit out of the movie theater. And oftentimes what we do is we put roadblocks in our way, right? And you gotta move closer and closer to that escape door, that exit door, so that you can actually escape all of this discontentedness.
Yeah. Okay, David. I mean, that's kind of what we talked about, and we've gone kind of full circle again. And I haven't given up, but I just say it's getting harder because the expectation maybe, but it's just the benefit isn't there, and it's probably because I'm not following the path as I should, and I do know the path. But it's not enough to just do a little bit of generosity, coming from the loving kindness, go out there, practice generosity. I'm doing that, but I certainly could do a heck of a lot more, but it's more than that. It's all of the Eightfold Path. I get it. But how do I go from where I am now to not give up and, find some inspiration, find some motivation, like where there's a light at the end of the tunnel when you're in this kind of state of mind, it'd be great if there was a pill you could take to make that happen, but there isn't.
There's no magic button, Paul. There's none of that. You've got to arise the energy within your own mind by applying right effort. And one of the things you need to do, we talked about this last time too, is you really need to be honest with yourself. Because you typically say that I know the path, but you don't. Because when we talk, you don't know the path. That's why you're not practicing it. And that's why I encourage you to study it. So you've got to be really honest to be able to see true reality, that you don't know the path, you're not practicing the path, and that's the reason why you're not experiencing the results. So, having these expectations that you should have these results, well, that's not very wise considering you don't know the path, you're not practicing the path. And even having expectations at all is unwise, but particularly since you don't know the path and you're not practicing it. So you've got to get rid of the expectations, and you've got to get rid of this delusion that you know the path, because you don't. We've seen that, right? Because you were talking to me and you were going through right view, right intention, right speech, and you didn't know the path at all. And that's why you went off. No. That's why you went off to go study it, but you never came back to confirm that you understood it.
Well, I've gone so far, and this is just the way I operate, is being a technical person. I went off and I summarized all of that. Like I've got a cheat sheet. I think I told you that I have a tendency to create these cheat sheets, So I have all that in one handy little document, but I haven't gone from that to memorizing it, so that I could answer all your questions, and I could do that. But I'm sure that that's not going to be enough, because it's not enough to just, even if I could answer all your questions, you'd say, well, what do you do about it? What are you doing? What practice are you having? And I'll probably say I'm not practicing, and that's why I'm not seeing the benefit. It's not enough to just know it. You have to actually live it. And that's going to be tough for me, probably. But
you can't live it until you've internalized it and memorized it. So it's a multi-step process, right? So that's why realizing that you're not practicing it, the first thing I know is, this person probably doesn't know it then. And then when we looked at that, you don't know it. So the first step is to know it, to internalize it to the mind. Having it on a cheat sheet, okay, that's where you're at right now. But you need to internalize it within your mind, so you have it direct recall. Like if I said, what is right intention? Or someone else asked you, hey, Paul, what is right intention? You need to be able to say the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. And you need to know exactly what those things are and how to practice them on a day-to-day basis. Because if you don't intellectually understand it and internalize it within the mind, you'll never practice it. So sitting on a cheat sheet somewhere, okay, that's fine, but it's not going to get into your practice of day-to-day life while it's on a cheat sheet. You've got to commit it to your memory, and you've got to do it in a multi-step process. Right now, you're putting the expectation on yourself that you should be practicing this, but you haven't even committed it to your memory yet. So you can't practice it because you haven't even committed it to your memory yet. So you've got to go from the cheat sheet into your mind. That's the next step.
Okay. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
I'll keep working on it.
Yeah, it'll be the best thing you've ever done in your entire life if you actually work on it and get to enlightenment. There's nothing better. As I oftentimes say, when I talk about the third precept, we talk about sex and stuff like this. I say, people can't imagine that there's something better out there in the world than sex, but there is. It's called enlightenment.
I don't know, David, if I told you that I'm going back to Thailand this fall in November.
Okay.
And you know that my wife had an accident the last time we were there in Bangkok, and she's recovered, and we're going back.
Nice.
We were determined that we're going to see Thailand because that's the one country we missed out on. So maybe I'll try to make that my goal is to meet with you at some point if it works out. And face to face, I will have answers to your questions.
I'll be.
That could be my goal.
I think
where I have the answers. I don't know that I'll have practiced them, but at least I'll be able to. You'll drill me, and I'll have the answers. And giving you these answers spontaneous and without any help, without any visual aids.
I think you can do it before November.
I'm going to start now.
Yeah.
But the goal would be to have it like ingrained into my brain by November.
How about
and to me, that's a big enough challenge.
Okay. Well, if that's the challenge you would like to accept for yourself, then wonderful. But I think you can do it before then.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, we'll get a start on it for sure.
Okay. I'll be here when you have questions.
Okay, then. Thanks again.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let me see if we have anything else. Okay. I don't see any other questions anywhere. So I'm just going to end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn and grow and develop on the path. And as you guys have further interest to learn and grow and develop, you're more than welcome to do that. Next week on Wednesday, I'm going to be in part 2 of our 4-part series where we'll be doing loving kindness meditation together and opening up to whatever questions you guys have. This Sunday in the group learning program, we're going to be in chapter 1, which is titled Universal Teachings, Love, No Harm, and Good Morals. This is the 3 universal teachings that you're going to see across Christianity, Muslim teachings, Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, and all these different things. I'm going to help you to see how all this stuff is connecting together, where the Buddha is giving you this complete package, but there's definitely some similarities to these other things. So it doesn't have to be fighting and who's right and who's wrong. We can see that there's a lot of similarities across all these things. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next couple of classes. And of course, we have the Pali Canon and English study group on Saturdays. So thank you all again for joining. Thank you for your support and continuing to help to share these teachings with others. And perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Be well and take care. Sawadee ka. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.